In the crowded alleys of Cebu City, where rusted tin roofs rattled with every passing jeepney, Miguel learned to sing before he learned to dream. His home was a single-room shack tucked behind a fish market, where the smell of salt and smoke never faded. Every morning, Miguel woke up to the sound of his mother bargaining for scraps of fish and his father counting coins that were never enough. School was a luxury, food was uncertain, but music was free. Miguel's only treasure was an old, cracked radio salvaged from the trash. Late at night, when the city finally quieted, he would tune into foreign stations, his heart stopping the first time he heard Elvis Presley. The voice felt powerful yet lonely, confident yet broken, just like him. Miguel practiced endlessly, gripping a broomstick like a microphone, singing to cracked walls and flickering candles. Neighbors laughed, calling him Elvis of the slums, never imagining how deeply those words would matter. When his father was offered a cleaning job in Ireland, the family saw it as survival, not opportunity. They sold what little they had and boarded a plane Miguel never thought he'd see from the ground, let alone inside. Ireland greeted them with icy winds, gray skies, and a loneliness that cut deeper than poverty ever had. Miguel shivered through nights in shared housing, missing Cebu's warmth and familiar chaos. At school in Dublin, classmates mocked his accent and his dream. Elvis, they laughed. From you. Miguel said nothing. Each night, he sang quietly into his pillow, promising himself that one day, the world would stop laughing and start listening. The backstage hallway of Ireland's Got Talent felt colder than the streets outside. Miguel stood alone, clutching his audition number with trembling fingers. His jacket, 2 sizes too big, had been borrowed from his father, still smelling faintly of cleaning chemicals. Around him, other contestants laughed confidently, warming up their voices, dressed in bright costumes and polished shoes. Miguel kept his head down, whispering Elvis lyrics under his breath like a prayer. When his name was called, his legs nearly gave out. The massive doors opened, revealing blinding lights and a sea of faces. The judges sat high above him, expressions unreadable. Miguel swallowed hard as the host asked the question everyone dreaded. What will you be singing today? Miguel hesitated, then answered softly, an Elvis Presley song. A ripple of laughter rolled through the audience. One judge smirked, another leaned back with folded arms. A third judge exchanged a doubtful glance, clearly expecting disappointment. To them, this skinny, poorly dressed Filipino boy didn't look like someone who belonged on a stage this big, let alone one daring enough to sing Elvis. Are you sure? A judge asked, half joking, half challenging. Miguel nodded, his voice barely steady. Yes, sir. As the music cue was prepared, Miguel closed his eyes. In that moment, the room disappeared. He was back in Cebu City, barefoot on concrete, singing to cracked walls. He remembered the hunger, the cold Irish nights, his parents' sacrifices, and every laugh thrown at his dream. The judges leaned forward, still skeptical. One tapped a pen impatiently. Another sighed. The audience waited, amused and curious. Then Miguel opened his mouth. And the first note changed everything. The first note didn't just fill the room, it cut through it. Miguel's voice came out deep, trembling, and unexpectedly powerful. The audience laughter froze mid-breath. A hush fell over the theater so complete that even the judges seemed caught off guard. This wasn't a boy trying to imitate Elvis. This was a soul speaking through an old song. Miguel stood still, eyes closed, gripping the microphone as if it were the last thing keeping him upright. Every lyric carried weight. Years of hunger in Cebu, nights of cold in Ireland, the ache of being unseen. His accent didn't weaken the song, it made it human. The melody rose, raw and aching, and the room leaned in closer, afraid to miss a single word. One judge's raised eyebrow slowly dropped. Another straightened in his chair, disbelief giving way to awe. A female judge pressed her hand to her chest, her eyes glistening as the chorus hit. The camera caught her wiping away the first tear, shocked at her own reaction. This was supposed to be an easy no. Instead, it was becoming something unforgettable. Miguel's voice cracked slightly, not from weakness, but from emotion, and that crack broke the final wall between him and the audience. A man in the crowd wiped his eyes. Someone whispered, "My God." The song felt less like a performance and more like a confession shared with thousands of strangers. As Miguel reached the final note, he opened his eyes for the first time. He saw the judges staring back at him, not laughing now, not doubting, but moved. The silence after the note lasted longer than the song itself, heavy and sacred. For exactly 90 seconds, Ireland had forgotten who they thought Miguel was. They only knew what he made them feel. For a heartbeat after the final note faded, no one moved. The silence was so thick it felt unreal, as if the entire theater was holding its breath. Miguel stood frozen at center stage, unsure whether he had done something extraordinary, or something terribly wrong. His hands shook as he waited for laughter to return. Instead, a judge slowly rose from his chair. He didn't clap at first. He simply stood there, eyes locked on Miguel, his face tight with emotion. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. "I've been a judge on this show for many years," he said, swallowing hard, "and I can honestly say, I was wrong about you." The audience erupted into applause, but it only grew louder when another judge leaned forward, wiping tears openly from her cheeks. She laughed through her crying, shaking her head in disbelief. "You walked in here with nothing," she said, "and in 90 seconds, you gave us everything." The third judge tried to speak but stopped, pressing a hand to his face. He took a deep breath, eyes red. "You didn't sing like Elvis," he said softly. "You sang like your life depended on it." Miguel's knees weakened. Tears streamed down his face as he bowed his head, overwhelmed by words he never thought he would hear. This was the same stage where they had laughed just moments earlier. Now, they were standing, clapping, crying, for him. The entire panel rose to their feet. The audience followed, filling the room with a thunderous standing ovation. Miguel looked out and saw strangers wiping their eyes, cheering his name. In that moment, he understood something profound. Poverty had shaped his voice, but truth had set it free. Miguel stood center stage as the applause refused to fade. The lights felt warmer now, no longer blinding, almost comforting. He wiped his tears with the sleeve of his borrowed jacket, still unable to believe what was happening. Just minutes ago, he was the poor Filipino boy people laughed at for dreaming too big. Now, Ireland was cheering for him. The host stepped forward, smiling through misty eyes. "Miguel," he said gently, "do you realize what you've just done?" Miguel shook his head, voice trembling. "I just sang, for my family." That answer broke whatever strength the judges had left. One judge placed a hand over his heart, nodding slowly. Another whispered, "This is why the rules don't matter, this is why music exists." When the votes were revealed, it was unanimous. Yes, yes, yes. The final buzzer sounded like a promise echoing across the theater. Backstage, Miguel collapsed into his father's arms. A man who had scrubbed floors in silence now cried openly, holding the son who had just rewritten their future. His mother pressed her forehead against Miguel's, whispering prayers of thanks in Tagalog. Years of sacrifice finally had a voice. Within hours, clips of the audition flooded social media. Headlines spread across Ireland and beyond. "A poor Filipino boy from Cebu stops Ireland's Got Talent cold." Viewers replayed those 90 seconds again and again, sharing tears with strangers online. Miguel didn't just pass an audition. He shattered expectations, crossed borders, and reminded the world that greatness can rise from nothing. That night, Ireland didn't just discover a singer. They discovered a story they would never forget.